Yeah, boy.
If there were ever such a thing as making something too good, Toyota may have accidentally stumbled upon it here. Hold on to that thought for later. The 4Runner platform has been as consistent as you can be in terms of sales since its debut in 1984. In the mid-2000s, all of its former playmates, like the Chevy Blazer, the Ford Bronco, and the Jeep Wagoneer, had all gone the way of the dinosaur, leaving it probably feeling quite lonely at the top. At its very best, it was perfect for some, and at its very worst, it was okay for everyone.
Okay.
But there wasn't really anywhere where it didn't at least somewhat fit in. And by its fourth generation, the world witnessed a spectacle that was like the sweet Christmas classic Home Alone, only really able to exist in a very brief window of time. You see, if you're like me, being 9 years old at heart, you've probably looked at most off-roaders or SUVs and thought, you know what would make that better? A V8? And Toyota said,
"Congratulations, you got a pay rise and we're putting them into production."
Revealing itself for the first time in October of 2002 as a 2003 model, the V8 4Runner came to play and party hard. The engine was the successor to the spirited and renowned 1UZ FE, and feeling more like a safety glasses and look both ways kind of approach to work, now aptly named the 2UZ FE.
How original.
And would offer a yes dear 235 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque from a 4.7 liter iron block V8. Later in 2005, VVT would bump that up to trade off a few pounds of torque for a few more horsepower, all while being delivered through an all-time all-wheel drive transmission that can be locked through a center diff to be split either 50-50, but was predominantly rear-wheel drive otherwise. There were also versions where you can get a V8 that was just two-wheel drive, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having a off-road V8 SUV.
What is my purpose?
You drive to the mall.
Oh my god.
Car and Driver had a 2003 model that they claim was able to manage a 0 to 60 time of 8 seconds flat, which albeit isn't bad for a 2+ ton SUV, but I'm mostly willing to give it a pass, seeing as in the way that you look at most Jeeps or other competitors from similar years, they really weren't meant to be speed demons. It seems like the V8 was more for increased towing capacity than anything, and Motor Trend even hinted at the fact that it may have been just a simple push to further promote the engine, but that's mostly skepticism. Regardless though, it was undoubtedly more exciting than its 1GR 4-liter V6 alternative, so with that it kind of became a vehicle that could do everything well, a little bit better. It had the torque to haul, an ergonomic interior to commute in, which by the way, I always hated those center console buttons and I'm glad that I'm not the only one that thinks about it.
Absolutely incomprehensible climate control system.
And a drivetrain and chassis that can handle some genuine off-roading, including an array of electric assists, which most drivers seem to agree mostly just felt intrusive. And of course, being true to the brand, you can expect it to be mostly overbuilt and fairly mechanically sound with a few exceptions. The engine was regarded as generally reliable, adequately powered, and understandably thirsty, and its biggest issues usually took their form in cracking exhaust manifolds and in later years, catalytic converter issues. For what it's worth, they also ran a timing belt instead of a timing chain, so introduced that 90K interval service.
Did you set it to Wumbo?
The big killer of these gentle giants, though, was the rust. These were body-on-frame chassis, and they unfortunately had big issues with rotting out, which was an issue that affected all but the last 2 years of this generation, which is ironically also the 2 lowest performing years in terms of sales, so odds are nowadays if you run into a 4th gen, then it's probably the former years and not the latter. There was a recall to deal with these issues, but you know that the recalls can never touch every single vehicle that rolls off of the line. But surely none of that could have been the reason that they did away with the V8 option altogether, right?
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
After all, chassis rust affected more than just the 4Runner, and other vehicles have historically seen way worse and prevailed regardless. So what happened? Why was this the only generation to ever see the V8? Well, remember that this thing started its life as a truck, and it still had that body-on-frame chassis with a solid rear axle, meaning it's probably not going to handle quite as well as some other vehicles like, say, the unibody Toyota Highlander or the GMC Envoy, and most people blatantly just don't need the overbuilt off-road capabilities.
I don't need it. I I don't need it.
Couple that with the fact that all of its competition were now several $1,000s cheaper for SUVs with much more accommodating interiors and smoother rides, and now you've got reviewers explicitly saying the V8 4Runner probably isn't the car for you. By and large though, the biggest factors to its disappearance were far more out of Toyota's control. Manufacturers across the board were being increasingly pressured to improve overall emissions standards and fuel efficiency, and in 2008 there was this little thing called the stock market that definitely played a role in how much money a typical household would have to spend on their next family SUV. Further development with the 1GR V6 also showed that it was capable of taking the mantle and replacing the V8 with comparable power and longevity for less money. The redesign of the next generation even briefly saw them experimenting with a 2.7-liter 4-cylinder engine option that could only be gotten with the 2-wheel drive transmission, but was appropriately bullied off stage for overwhelming underperformance and proof that the smaller engine doesn't always mean better fuel economy. Nowadays, with Toyota making shift towards more hybrid drivetrains, increased demand in fuel economy, and emissions standards, it's highly unlikely that we'll ever see another V8 4Runner again, outside of some homebrewed concoctions. All that to say, if you can get your hands on one these days and you're okay with spending a few extra dollars at the pump, they're still proven to have lasted the test of time and typical Toyota fashion, and with proper maintenance and maybe a little luck, they can happily see you through for several more years. Some even suggest trying to get around that big Toyota tax by going with the Lexus equivalent, but that's for another video. Speaking of which, make sure to let me know which vehicle you'd like to hear about by commenting below, and if you like the idea of accidental success from Toyota, be sure to check out this video here. But most importantly, thank you so much for watching. Now drive safe, stay curious, and have a wonderful day. Wait, what are you still doing here? Go on and click on this video. I promise, it's a good video. Go before he does it again. Ah!